Welcome to the Typical Sportsman podcast. Terribly sorry for the horrible camera view. Halfway through this episode, my computer just completely crapped out, and I still wanted to get the episode done, still wanted to get it put out for you. So I jumped over to the iPad. Couldn't select to have an external camera and an external microphone. Audio is far more important, so I chose to have the external microphone. So sorry for the camera angle. Sorry for the terrible view. It's just my iPad camera and what I could work with. I am joined by Bryan Broderick, the founder of Day 6 Broadheads. I have absolutely fallen in love with Broadheads, with Day 6 Broadheads. And the reason for that, I was on a mission to find a new head. Had some failures one year and knew I needed to change some things up. So I went on a deep dive to find the best broadhead I could find. Knowing what I wanted, knowing what I was looking for, I found all of that in the Day 6 Evo. I've fallen in love with it. I've shot, I think I tried to add it up. I think I've shot 11 animals with the Evo now, and it has performed every single time that I've performed, I should say, and performed in incredible ways. I could share stories all day long about just being blown away by the performance of these heads. However, I don't want you to just hear that and think that I'm saying it's the only head that will work. So what me and Bryan do, we take a deep dive into broadheads, into the design of broadheads, the material of broadheads. Not all two blades are created equal. The shape of the blade makes a massive difference. The placement of the bleeders make a massive difference. We talk single bevel versus double bevel. We talk mechanicals versus fixed. We take a deep dive into what you should be looking for in a broadhead. And again, my hopes is that you do not listen to this and think that me and Bryan are saying this is the one way, this is the only style broadhead that will work. We're not. Bryan actually says there are a lot of people that should be shooting mechanicals, that he would recommend they shoot mechanicals too. So we're not saying that this is the only style broadhead that will work. We just want to share some information with you so you can consider these things when it comes time for your next broadheads. Because I will say this, and I've said it 1,000 times, your broadhead should probably you should probably put more consideration and thought into your broadhead than anything else. Because at the end of the day, doesn't matter what bow you're shooting, doesn't matter what sights you have, doesn't matter what camo you're wearing, about what boots you got on, what binos you have strapped to your chest. None of that matters. The broadhead is the first and sometimes only thing that encounters that animal in a hunt. So your broadhead should be first on your list of things to put consideration to. So all we want to do is give you some things to consider when it comes time to choose your broadheads. That's it. Now, I will also say I just released this incredible shirt. My boy Taz designed it. Looking sharp shirt. There will be a hat really soon following with this sexy patch on it, but it shows the Day 6 broadhead. I just wanted to design a shirt that for the dudes who love getting their broadheads hair popping sharp. So I decided to put the Day 6 Evo on there as the broadhead. You can go get the shirt right now, typicalsportsman.com. Hat will be soon to follow. It'll be the first patch hat that I drop. So make sure and go check that out. Guys, this episode is brought to you by my friends over at 2O. You guys know I'm a big fan of going out west. I love hunting out west. I love just adventuring out west, even if I'm not hunting. And when you go out west for the first time, you realize that your clothing is something that you have to consider. The weight of your clothing, the system that you're running, all of those things have to be considered. 2O makes an incredible Western system for hunting. And the pattern is just incredibly sexy. Now, you have to check out the new puffy heated vest that 2O just dropped. It is awesome. It packs down. It's really light. It's just a nice all-around vest. But then it gives you the option to plug a battery pack in, which we're all going to have on the mountain anyways, and get some extra heat. It is, in my opinion, something that's going to save you a lot of room, because with the heat elements, you might be able to eliminate an extra piece from having to carry. But also it just packs down really small and compact. It's super light. It's an awesome vest. Make sure and go check it out. Check out the entire lineup from 2.0. They have incredible base layers, fantastic merino, probably the best merino I've ever found, an incredible sexy camo pattern, fantastic rain gear. The heated vest is just a bonus, and it let me eliminate a full piece from having to pack into the mountains. Go check out 2.0 for, in my opinion, some of the best Western gear you can get your hands on. But let's jump in with Mr. Bryan, talk day 6, talk about the recent purchase of day 6 by Mr. Remy Warren. And then we're going to get into all things Broadhead designs, what we found works, what we found does not.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
Guys, one of the easiest and cheapest ways to upgrade your bow is with a custom set of strings. A lot of people make custom strings, but very few people do it as well as Dominant Strands. Now, the reason I believe they do it really well is because Lewis over there at Dominant Strands, he has years of experience in the industry. His customer service is phenomenal. He offers an incredible wide range of different materials to build your next set of strings out of. And he just knows archery. Lewis is the guy, if I've got a bow that I just can't figure out, I call Lewis. He is incredibly informed, and he's ready to help you build the best set of strings for your bow. Go to dominant-strands.com and get your next bowstring today. Now, I tell everybody, the moment you get a recurve, the best and cheapest and easiest way to make that recurve faster, quieter, and shoot better is to get a custom string. Lewis makes a phenomenal string for a recurve. Guys, go to dominant-strands.com, use code typical10 to get 10% off your entire order, whether that's a set for your compound, a set for your crossbow, a new string for your recurve, any material, any colors. That code is going to get you 10% off your entire order. Dominant Strands, go check them out. All right, Bryan, I'm excited for this episode. And you know why, back in the Bear Archery days, at the Bear Archery podcast, I had you on for a full Broadhead breakdown. I still get tons of comments on that episode. People still go back and listen to it. But I also wanted to kind of further that discussion and go a little deeper than that.
Okay.
So I just want to do a full Broadhead breakdown, like what works, what doesn't. Since that podcast, I have spent an incredible amount of time with your heads. I actually told Remy on a podcast not too long ago that I think I'm up to 11 animals now with the day 6. And so I've got a lot of feedback to give. And so I just want to take a deep dive into Broadheads, Broadhead designs, what works, what doesn't, what to look for. Before we do that, though, give us an introduction to Bryan. Give us an introduction to day 6. Some big news just took place at day 6. So we can kind of just talk about all that.
Okay.
But before that, man, how did you get into starting day 6? Like, where did the idea come from? All that good stuff.
Well, honestly, I kind of got tricked into it. So this friend of mine is a buffalo outfitter over in Northern Australia, and he was getting a little tired of the stuff people were bringing in, to shoot buffalo and bantang, stuff like that. And he started playing with getting arrows made, and was kind of leaning on me a little bit for insight, because he knew I had a lot of experience with bow hunting. Number one, worked in an archery shop all through high school and college back in the 80s. So I was around when everything kind of sucked and having to figure out how to make all that work. And so, and then I had some, composites experience. So we started talking, and he made these first shafts in Australia, and he came over and hunted with me, and I loved the shafts, but I didn't like the components. So I kind of had my own components machined. And then he came back hunting again, and he's like, "Oh man, I like your components better than my components. Why don't we partner on this?" And so I said, yeah, let's do that. And I had a business I'd been in for 25 years at the time. And so I wasn't really looking to get into something else, but it was going to be a e-commerce business. I thought it would be small. I thought it would be, something that my wife and my two boys could help with. We could do in the evenings or just something extra. And it would be something more of a quality of life type fun thing for me to do because I love archery and bow hunting so much. So we basically got everything ready to go. And he just called me up one day and said, mate, my heart's not in this. I love my outfitting business, but I'm also going to go into the kangaroo jerky business. So,
okay.
Cause they commercially shoot kangaroos over there.
Yeah.
And so, he was going to do that. And he's like, I just don't want to be in the arrow business. I was like, well, crap, we've like ready to go. So I was really struggling with what to do. My wife and my boys wanted me to do it. They were pushing me so hard to do it. And my oldest son was graduating from high school. And we went to the church and they had like a really nice banquet for all the graduating seniors. And so we went to that. And on our table, there was a bag. And the pastor said, we're going to pull these things out of the bag and then we're going to discuss their meaning. And the very first thing that we pulled out of the bag was a wooden arrow that they had in there. And my wife looked at me and said, God's trying to tell you something, buddy. This is, we need to do this. And so, we did. We started day 6 and, man, it just like, I was surprised at how many people wanted exactly what I wanted from an arrow that you couldn't buy. Like back then you couldn't buy it. And so now everybody's got that version of what we make. But, so it kind of like got out of control. And then we did it for 4 years and I was getting zero sleep because, I was running my original business, my career. I was leaving the house at 5 every day, getting home at 5, having a quick dinner. And then I was going to my warehouse and building fletching arrows all night till 2 or 3 in the morning. Then I'd get a couple hours of sleep and then start over again. This went on for a while. And so after 4 years, we had an opportunity to sell some of our ancillary businesses that supported our main business. And then my youngest son had graduated from high school. And again, we prayed about it and said, it's hard to walk away from what we've been doing so long because it's very lucrative business. But, is it a quality of life business or just a quality of bank account? So, we decided to just go full steam 3 years ago with day 6, after 4 years of doing both. And then, I told my wife, I said, she was pushing really hard for me to do this. And I said, if we're going to do it, we've got to move. Like there's no way I can stay where we are, where we're born and raised with this business that I've had for 25 years and not keep getting sucked into doing projects for people, Right. So, and we'd always talked about moving to Wyoming when the kids graduated. And she said, well, we're moving to Wyoming, right? And I said, yes, we are. so
load up.
That's what we did 3 years ago. We loaded up, we moved out here and Dakota that works for us, he moved here and his wife she moved here and she got a job. She's a special ed teacher and she got a job here in the school system. And Dakota and I said, if we're doing this and we're making this our life, we're going to do it all in. And so we went out and bought all our own machines and got a facility and started making everything ourselves that we could make. And because we wanted to be able to control the quality, we want to be able to control production. And so, yeah, we just made the commitment to do it. And COVID made a lot of those decisions for us. So,
yeah.
And I don't know if anybody that's been a customer of ours for a while has noticed that we haven't raised prices, and where everything else has gone through the roof over the last 5 years since COVID. The reason we didn't raise prices is, number one, we don't have dealers. So we don't have that 50% margin that we have to live with. And then number two, about the time things were going crazy and getting so expensive, we made the commitment to buy all of our own equipment and started building everything in-house that we could. And so it actually lowered our costs. And so there was no reason for us to have to raise prices, because we weren't a slave to vendors, suppliers, things like that anymore. We were creating everything ourselves. So probably not a good businessman, because I know a lot of companies raise their prices even though their costs didn't go up that much, and they've left them there. And so they just increased margins, but we just wanted to be fair. So yeah, that's how we got where we are. And then last year, Remy had been shooting our stuff for almost 5 years. And in that time, we had gotten to be, pretty good friends. And he was kind of just always fascinated with what we produced with this little company and just a few of us, and how we worked and the quality of what we did and how our stuff was just simple and worked. And so last year he just said, "Hey, would you ever consider selling the business or selling me part of the business to where we could do this together? I can't do what I'm doing forever, being a guide and outfitter and then traveling all over the world hunting. I've got kids. I need to be home more. I need to be able to spend time with my kids and raise my family. And so I need something that I can be a part of that will allow me to have the more time to do that and not be gone." So we've talked about this for the last year. And then, a few weeks ago, we got everything finalized. And so, so now he actually bought the majority of the company. He wants to, steer the ship and be dedicated to this. And we talked through a bunch of different scenarios. And I just told him, I said, "Man, we're at different parts of our life. I'm older. My kids are grown. I don't need this to be, like my future business wise and financially and all. And I think if you're vacillating between what you want to do, I think you need to really commit to this. And, if you're going to do it. And that's what he did. So I'm still an owner, but he is the majority owner. And the beauty of that is that he has 3 of the finest guys I've ever met that work for him, that help him with his business. They're all 3 incredibly creative, talented, just solid guys. And so between the 4 of them, they're going to handle all the marketing, all the forward facing things that, I stink at. So I just don't like I don't know. It just makes me uncomfortable doing that stuff. And so it's just kind of a perfect partnership. And we'll, Dakota and my wife and Dakota's wife and the other people that help us here, we're going to continue to do exactly what we've been doing, producing the products exactly the same. We've got new products we're working on that some of the things Dakota and I have had prototyped, built, and hunted with as long as 3 years ago. But I just never brought it to market because, I just didn't feel like I could get it out there where people would see it. And then we were struggling to keep up as it was. So now with those guys taking that load, we're going to be able to release some of this newer stuff that's pretty cool. That'll reach a little bit bigger audience, I think, than what we have in the past. So pretty exciting stuff. Yeah,
man, we've got a lot to talk about on the Broadhead front, but so I don't want to take a lot of time, but I'll just say this, like, it's unbelievable, man. And I try not to get too preachy on the podcast because you came here to hear hunt talk, but if you've listened to this podcast at all, I'm in the stage of life. God just called me to start a church. And so in March, we launched a brand new church in a brand new city. And so it's been like a whirlwind, but at the same time, just like yourself, man, when you fully submit to the will of God, it brings so much peace and so much joy and so much like, yeah, I'm busy and I'm stressed and I'm, but you just see from the whole time, you're like, man, this is what God had in store and he set me up for it my whole life. And now it's just, there's no place I'd rather be. 4 months ago, I was scared to death. Now I'm like, dude, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. And so, incredible story, man. And I said it in a video as soon as I heard that Remy had, come on board as an owner. I said it in a video that part of what I have always loved about you and Day 6 is the people, the company behind it. And that stays the same with Remy. Remy is one of the greatest guys ever. He does quite a bit with Pope and Young. And so I've gotten to work with him on some of that type of stuff, and just an incredible guy, stand-up guy, nicest dude ever, incredibly knowledgeable. And we were talking before, sometimes it's hard to trust what an influencer says. However, Remy is one of those guys that, like, I'll take it to the bank. And I've always said, if it's good enough for Remy, it's good enough for me. Like that, that's simple. And so I'm incredibly excited about what the future looks like for Day 6, and just seeing it continue to grow and seeing it continue to be ran by people that I know I can be proud to support, that I know I can be proud to stand behind. The products speak for themselves. If you've not shot a Day 6 broadhead, like, first off, go buy some Day 6 broadheads. They speak for themselves, but the people behind the company is what's important to me. And that just goes further with Remy. So I really am truly excited to see what the future looks like with Day 6. And just can't wait to see what happens, man, because it's going to be awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. He's the only person I would do this with. I said I'd never have a partner again. But this was a absolute no-brainer for me. It's the stuff that people don't see about him is the reason we did this. It's just he was raised right. He treats people the way he would want to be treated. I've been fortunate enough to meet his family. They're all exactly the same type of people. They have strong faith. And like you said, I really hate it for people that have not, I really hate it for people that have not found, there's the profound value in faith. And when you get to a point in your life where you can just let go and trust, things get so easy. And, and like I always say, the most powerful thing that we possess is, our faith, but also our ability to forgive. And like, throughout my life, I've, had some tough stuff and had some people really disappoint me. I'm sure I've disappointed people myself, but being able to forgive people and just let it go, and just turn things over to God is just, man, it just makes things so stinking easy. And it's so hard to find that place. And it took me a long time to get there. But it just makes decisions easy. It makes life easy. It makes the hard things easier. And so I don't know. There's really no other thing I can say other than, our success and where we are in this, being able to partner with Remy on this is all just, it's been out of our hands a long time. And so we're just super happy to be a part of it and follow that path. So anyway, we can talk really bad about other people's broadheads now if you want to.
Let's do it, man.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Let's do it. No, just to kind of further that real quick, there's two people in this industry, and I've said this before. There's two people that I'm kind of like a fangirl of. And, I've had the pleasure of getting to meet a lot of people and be around a lot of people. Some of them, as you turn out to be scumbags.
Yeah.
But I've gotten the pleasure to meet a lot of great people in this industry, but two of them I've always just been a fan of, and that's Remy Warren and Clay Newcomb, and they both shoot day 6. So I'm like, okay, well, there's something going on here. If these two dudes are rocking it, I better check it out. So,
well, Clay shot day 6 before anybody knew who Clay Newcomb was.
Right. Yeah.
He shot,
and that's
he shot him before he even went to work for Meat Eater. And it's funny you say that, because within an hour of Remy making his announcement last week, Clay Newcomb was one of the very first people that reached out to me to say, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. This is going to be the best thing ever. You two guys joining forces. And it just, how busy Clay is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's pulled a million different directions, but he took the time to reach out and say thank you. I mean, say congratulations. And I was so thankful for that. And I've got some really good friends in the hunting industry that I never thought I would have. And because my first few years in the hunting industry was, riddled with, running across the wrong people first, and had to learn hard lessons. But man, there's some good ones out there. I mean, Clay is definitely one of them. Ryan Callahan, that also works at Meat Eater, and I'm not the biggest Meat Eater fan. I'll not for any particular reason, but those two guys are fantastic. Ryan spends so much of his time fighting for other people and fighting for us to make sure that we have public lands. And he has to deal with all kinds of people, to do it. I mean, I feel like we all owe guys like Clay and Ryan that fight so hard, for public lands and our rights. I feel like those guys really need to be supported and raised up by all of us, because they do so much. And then there's some other incredibly fantastic humans in the hunting industry. I've gotten to be really good friends with Brad Brooks that owns Argali. I don't know if you've ever seen the Argali products, but
I have, yeah.
Just a phenomenal human, honest, straightforward, does what he says he's going to do, gives his time to others. I mean, just a very generous, honest person. And, and so and there's several others, I'm leaving tons of people out, but when you start out the way we did and start out maybe with the wrong people, because you kind of, never meet your heroes, right? So you start out with these people and think you've only seen the public side, and then you get to know them personally and you're like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So for us starting out like that, which was very detrimental to our business, by the way, and then when you make the decision to separate yourself from them, you're very cautious on who you engage with moving forward. And so,
right.
That, then to have guys like I just mentioned and Remy and those guys come in and come on board with us and enter our life and become really good friends, very good advisors, people that you can call and look to for advice. It makes it very rewarding. And, and it gives you faith in human nature within the hunting industry. It's not all just dog eat dog, So anyway, there's great people out there. We're like over the moon to be doing business with Remy now. And I had no idea how strong his following is and how much faith they have in him. But I can tell you since the last 8 days, since he's announced that he is an owner of Day 6, we're in big trouble. We're going to have to catch another gear, buddy, because it is getting it now. It is crazy. Yeah, it is absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
I want to talk all things broadheads.
Okay.
I want to really take a deep dive into broadheads. I am of the firm belief that no matter what bow you're shooting, what camo you're wearing, what boots you're wearing, what binos you run, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, sometimes the only point of contact you have with an animal is your arrow. And the first thing that has contact with that animal is the broadhead. So broadhead, you should put the most consideration into any piece of your gear that you run. Secondly, should be the arrow, because at the end of the day, again, that's the only thing that contacts the animal, no matter what.
Right.
So you should put the most consideration into that period. Now, I will say a lot of people, and me and Sam Solholt on last episode, we talked briefly about Day 6, and we talked briefly about broadhead and arrow setups. But we also mentioned not complicating it. A lot of people way overcomplicate broadheads, way overcomplicate arrows, which again, while we're putting the most consideration into it, that does not mean overcomplicating it. And that does not mean changing it up every 4 days. I can almost just about promise you that I will never shoot another broadhead.
Yeah.
Because when I find something that works, that's what I'm going to run. So for those of you, like if you're watching this, you can see I've designed a shirt that says looking sharp. And I'm like, okay, I got to put a broadhead on it. Well, I'm not going to put anything other than the Day 6 on it. So we've got the Day 6 broadhead looking sharp. That's how much belief I have in this broadhead. Like this head again. And before we get too far into this, I've only had one negative experience with the Day 6, and it was, I still don't know what happened really. And I'm just going to share this story briefly and then we'll dive into different designs.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I set in a blind last year, I see my target buck and he is running and gunning all across this field, chasing does this way, chasing does that way, scraping over here, rubbing over there, humping a doe over here, like just every which way you can go. And I watched him for 3 hours. I mean, he would run out to 60 yards. He would run into 50 and then run out to 400 yards and chase a doe over here. And I lose sight of him. And I think, man, he hit the river. He's gone. And then he'd run back this way. Like I just all day long was watching this buck. So I already knew, I'm like, okay, if I get a shot at this deer, it's going to be a sloppy shot, if you will. It's going to be a quick, shot. You got to take it at this buck. And so by the time I actually did get a shot at him, I had some does come out and I had 7, 8, 9 does starting at 10 yards to 17 yards, 18, 20 yards in front of me. Well, he comes at 34 and he's on not a run, not a trot, but a brisk walk. And I was like, man, I can't stop him because the moment I make a noise, I've got, 9 sets of eyes popping over and looking at me. And so I was like, I'm gonna have to shoot this deer, while he's walking. And so I released the trigger and felt like it was a great shot. I mean, it felt like I pinwheeled him. He jumps out to 40 and stops and he's looking around and I'm like, well, I might as well get another one in him. I think the only thing I can come to the conclusion of is I missed this second shot. He acted as though I hit him, sounded like I hit him. But but I didn't have time to dial my sight down. Like, didn't have time to range him. So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to split my 30 and 40 pins and, punch it off. No. I decided he was at almost 50. So I'm like, I'm just going to hold my 40 on top of his back and shoot.
Yeah.
And so I shot. He acted like I hit him, sounded like I hit him. So he jumps again, runs out. And I don't see him run out the other side of the tree line. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, he's got to just be bedded down right in that tree line right there. And so I never do this. Like I'm always like, give him time, wait. But I just, given the scenario, I'm like, I think I can. Freshly plowed field. I'm like, I can walk over there as quiet as humanly possible. And so I walk over there and sure enough, he's bedded there just looking around. And so I shoot another one in him 20 yards and he finally died. So I'm like, man, 3 stinking arrows to kill this buck. The only thing I can think of, even based off the holes, like I don't know what happened. I had to have missed the second shot. Never found that arrow. So I'm thinking it just hit a tree behind him, scared him. So he jumped. I don't know. Anyways, that was the only experience I have had with a day 6 where it wasn't like, holy crap. Like this was devastating to this animal. My wife, full pass through on a big bear in Idaho. And she's only shooting 46 pounds at a 26-inch draw. And she blew through this bear. And the arrow stuck in the ground after. Blood trail was great. I've shot several bears with them. Several bucks have died with them. Like they have performed flawlessly. Now, the reason I got to day 6, and this is the conversation I want to get into. I was in the market for a new broadhead. I had a failure with a single bevel. We'll cover single bevels and I'll go over that failure in a minute. I had a failure with a single bevel, as much as you can consider it a failure. And so I was just like, man, I got to find something new. I got to find something different. And I knew in my head what I was looking for, but I really couldn't pin it down. And I heard you do a broadhead breakdown and I was like, that's what I've been looking for. That's what I need. And so I tried day 6 and just fell in love. That being said, I want to give that same broadhead breakdown to talk about designs, to talk about blades, to talk about bleeders, to talk about all of that stuff. So before we run down each kind of style, run me through the different like main categories that you would give broadheads.
As far as like segment them out, like the mechanicals and then.
Yeah. So would you break it down like as far as mechanicals, double bevel and single bevel and 3 blades, or would you?
I think I would just do mechanicals, 3 blades, kind of the interchangeable blade styles, and then 2 blades.
Okay.
There is no difference between a single bevel and a double bevel as far as like configuration. It's a 2-blade head.
Correct.
Unfortunately, everybody has started calling 2-blade heads single bevels. And so that's what people are looking for when they go into this. And so before we even get into this, I'm going to do something that I have only done once before, and I did it last week on a podcast in Idaho. But I've had people give me so much crap about this, about not saying this, that, and you're going to know that this is very not me when it comes to this, but people have given me so much crap about, Bryan, you have got to at least allude to your bow hunting history and your career. No, not career, but bow hunting history and your experience, because all of these things that you're talking about make so much sense, but it sounds just like everything else everybody says on podcasts and YouTube and all those things. And you have to get over not wanting to say these things publicly, to differentiate what you're saying versus what everybody else says. And so here's what I'm going to say. I was very fortunate. I grew up in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I was very fortunate to have incredible places to hunt. I was very fortunate to find Western hunting at the age of 17. And I killed my first whitetail with a bow in 1984.
Man, you're old.
I know. So I was very fortunate to grow up in Alabama, where we had a 4-month season. The first half of my life, you could shoot a buck a day for 120 days.
Oh my gosh.
And then they had doe days back then before they understood deer management. So we had the week of Christmas to shoot does. By the time I was 16, never touched a gun again. It was strictly bow hunting. By the time I was in my 20s, it was a buck and a doe a day for 120 days.
Jiminy Christmas.
Yes. And we had hogs. So I would have to shoot low years, 25 does a year with my bow, high years, 75 with my bow for our doe management, for the crop damage stuff. And the hogs were, before we knew we were fighting a battle we would never win, the rule always is when the hogs show up, the deer hunt's over. And hogs in the 80s and early 90s versus hogs now are different animals. They were dumb as a box of rocks back then. And now they're probably sharper than the deer are. They're hard to kill. I killed my first elk in New Mexico at 18 on public land in 1991. Before the internet, before GPS, paper maps, mailing in your check with your snail mail application to get your tags. In 92, I was living in my truck the whole month of September in at least 3 different Western states, usually through the second week of October. So when I'm talking about what a broadhead needs to do, if you throw all the Western, Canada, Alaska, international stuff out, just throw that out for now and just talk about growing up, living my entire life until 3 years ago in Alabama with whitetails and hogs. Just whitetails and hogs in Alabama over 40 years is well over 1,000 arrows through animals. Not tracking other people's stuff, what I've shot. Lion's share of that is whitetail does and hogs, of course. But what it is it's a sample size that is hard to compare anything else to. It's getting such a large number of results to really generate empirical evidence on what a broadhead and an arrow is supposed to do to an animal.
Right.
And I only say those things just to qualify what I'm trying to say, as I want to make sure people don't think it's just regurgitating what I've heard on another podcast. So, and if you look at our broadhead, it is so simple. Like, it's incredibly simple. And if you look at any of these, like if you ever see any of these incredible broadhead collections that people have, and you look at our heads look like what broadheads looked like 1,000 years ago. I mean, we did not reinvent the wheel. The problem is we brought back what works, and the hunting industry kind of has gone away from what works. In the interest of creating products for shelves instead of the mountain. I'm always very hesitant to talk about all that stuff because I don't want it to come across the wrong way. But I've just been very fortunate to see a lot of arrows go through animals. And to further that just a bit, everyone that's ever hunted with me over the last 35 or 40 years, they've not been like serious, dedicated bow hunters. They pick their bow up a week before, and it's the average guy. And most of them have shot mechanicals. So I've had a tracking dog up until last year. So I've tracked so many deer hit with arrows and so many deer hit with mechanicals. I just have a really good front row seat to what arrows do on animals. And so anyway, I rambled on a little bit about all that, but I just wanted, you to understand, like, I'm not just guessing. But I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that based on that experience and that sample size, this is the determinations I've made on what an arrow and broadhead needs to do. And that's all I'm trying to do is qualify that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I value about guys like yourself. I mean, so many people just take what they hear on Instagram or YouTube, they take it to the bank. And you're like, I mean, I would slow down a little bit. Like I would listen to dudes who have been there, done that, seen it. And that's why I'm a big fan of asking, outfitters who aren't, they have no ties to anybody. Like, hey, what have you seen work well? What have you seen fail? You've tracked a lot of animals. A lot of dudes have come in here with different equipment, different styles. What have you seen over the years? And so, to me, that's the knowledge that you're about to bring to us is what you've seen over the years, what you've seen work, what you've seen doesn't. Now, before we dive really deep into this, I want to preference, we are not telling you that there's only one way to do this. We're not telling you that what you shoot is wrong. We're not telling you that if you don't shoot a day 6 broadhead, you're going to lose all your animals and never kill something else. We're not telling you that's not my style. I mean, my style is not, hey, my way is the right way. My style is to share with you what I've experienced and what I've learned over the years to give you some really good information and help you make a better decision. That's my style. Not to tell you like, hey, this is it. Like, this is the one way, because it's not. Like me and Bryan both understand you could shoot a deer with a field point, and if you hit it correctly, it's going to die. We get that. But there are things that we have found that work better and things that we have found that don't work as well. And that's all we want to share with you. I will apologize. If you're watching on YouTube or Carbon TV, Wild TV, you have noticed a switch in my camera and the quality of what you're seeing on my view. My computer just completely crashed during the podcast, so I had to switch to an iPad, and I cannot connect an external microphone and a camera at the same time. So I just got to use the camera on the iPad, and but the audio is more important. So that's why I chose the mic. So you all know I love arrows. So therefore I love vanes, and I love trying different vane configurations. I love seeing how they fly, how they tune, how quiet they are. Boning Archery makes, in my opinion, the greatest selection of vanes known to man. And for good reason, because they've been making vanes longer than your grandpapa's been alive. They make a phenomenal line of vanes. So whatever you're trying to do, whether you're wanting to shoot paper, 3D, or you're wanting to go out and hunt, whether you're shooting a crossbow, compound, they've got vanes for you. Now, they just recently introduced, in my opinion, the greatest vane of all time, which is the Alpha. It's an all-new design. It's made out of the same stiff material that my previous favorite vane, the Heat vane, is made out of. So it's whisper quiet. It stabilizes your arrow very well, and it's just an all-around great vane. Now, they also just introduced the Atlas, which is the same shape and profile as the Alpha, out of the same classic blazer material. Guys, here's what I'll tell you. Boning simply makes really good products. If you are an arrow tinkerer like me and you want to try a bunch of different vanes, I would highly encourage you to go try out Boning. Some of my favorite vanes are definitely the Heat vane. The Heat vane in a 4-fletch is almost unbeatable, just barely outdone by an Alpha vane in a 3-fletch with a hardcore left helical. that's just money every single time. Guys, go check out Boning, whether you're looking for, longer 4-inch veins, whether you're looking for micro veins, they've got something for you. And I promise you it's going to perform every time. Let's jump in, Bryan.
Yeah.
First off, like starting days, back then, I'm guessing you were shooting like a Bear Razorhead, 2-blade broadhead. Just walk me through your journey of broadheads and kind of how you stumbled upon what you thought was the best.
Well, yeah. So I basically, when I first started, I started what I was shooting is what I could get at Kmart or the small local shop that we had. So there was always like multiple things in my quiver. I started out with a compound, with a quickie quiver, and I had Bear Razorheads. I had, I think they were Colpin, really cheap heads, satellites, and then I landed on. I think it was Barry Archery, Barre, Rocky Mountain Razorheads. And they made, I think it was a 130 that was like 1.25 inches wide. And I ended up landing on those and staying on that from a compound side for a long time. And then of course I made my transition to Thunderheads when they came out. The Thunderhead 125s. And so, man, that was the go-to for so long. And then in 90, I think it was 92 or 93, I built my first recurve with a friend who was building bows and started hunting with a stick bow some. And that's kind of where the Bear Razorheads came in. And I hunted with those and Zwickeys, lots of Zwickeys. And then I met Jerry Simmons, who was an Alabama guy that made Simmons broadheads, and started shooting those. And the transition from like the Zwickeys and the Bear Razorheads to the Simmons, there was actually a noticeable change, but I wasn't sophisticated or smart enough at the time to understand what the change was. And so,
right.
But the change was I went from a convex shaped style head to a concave where the blades flip out, and started like leaving more arrows in animals than I normally did. And I was shooting the same things out of my compound at this point. I'd moved to like Simmons for compound and the recurve. And so eventually kind of a light switch went off. And I found some different heads that I liked. And that's kind of when I guess it would have been early 90s to mid 90s is when I went into the single bevel world, and started shooting a lot of different bigger single bevels out of compound and recurve. And did that for a long time. And then I ran across a few different heads. Some of them had bleeders, some of them didn't, but all the bleeders seemed to be like sticking straight out with these little small things after, kind of afterthought type things.
Yeah.
And I was like, right. Dang, those bleeders are just like the concave shape, the little wing shape of like what those Simmons were. So I know that's going to slow down the arrow going through and create drag. And it also dulls faster because the blade angle is so important with regards to slicing versus chopping, which is a big thing for edge retention and drag. So the cool thing is that at the same time all this was happening, I was going through like understanding structural engineering for my career in construction. And so I learned what sidewall friction was with regards to pilings driven into the ground. I always thought that a piling, you basically would drive a piling down until the flat butt end of that would hit something hard or something stable. And that's what held the structure up. And then once my engineering education progressed, I realized that it was sidewall friction. It was the soil over that whole length of that piling or that pole gripping the side of it. And that's why the soil density and consistency mattered, is what kind of friction it would create on the surface area of that piling on the side. And when I started understanding that, I was like, a light switch went off and I thought, this is just an arrow. And so to get an arrow to consistently go through animals and get maximum penetration, you need to eliminate sidewall friction. You need to eliminate all types of friction and resistance. And that's where my understanding of what a broadhead should be, what it should do, all of that came into play. And so I really started leaning heavily on the 2-blade styles with bleeders like the Bear Super Razor Head. Not that a little bleeder is going to really increase blood flow that much, but what it does is that it opens that perfect slit that a 2-blade leaves. That little bleeder opens that up to a cross cut, and what it does is it creates less resistance for that arrow to pass through behind it, thus eliminating sidewall friction. So once I started going to that style, it was like, okay, this is great. Well, you fast forward until 2010-ish and further, it was either a mechanical or replacement blade style head, like a Thunderhead or Muzzy or something like that, or a straight 2-blade. It wasn't like you couldn't find a 2-blade with a bleeder that was built with quality materials and quality, processes. So, and so then in 2016, in about 2000, I guess it would have been 2014, I found some heads in Hungary that I liked, that had kind of like everything I was looking for, but they changed them and you couldn't continue to get them that way. And then there was also a head that was being made out of Texas for a very short time out of good materials, and it went away. And so that's when I said, I'm going to make my own. And so I know this is going to sound funny, but I went on madeinchina.com. That's probably something different now, but that's what it was, madeinchina.com. And I sent pictures and specs of these blades that I wanted. And of course, everybody wanted like 5,000 minimums and 10,000 minimums to do it. And it's all these guys named like Doug and Steve and Jim, when they're, for sure that's really not, they're Chinese guys. That's not their name. And they only communicated with you from like 8 at night till 4 in the morning because they were on the other side of the world. So anyway, I messed around with this for a few years and finally got this guy convinced to make me some quote samples, and made me 500 samples. And I ended up putting together my own heads. They still weren't exactly what I wanted, but I was kind of making do. And then in 2016, Iron Will came out, and I said, oh gosh, this is probably going to be like what I'm going to want. And so I got some, and the first thing that stood out to me was the bleeder blade. It's at the back and it sticks straight out. And so it's chopping and creating drag. I'm like, dang, almost, like it was almost perfect. And then they're made out of just a kind of a cheap tool steel. So in Alabama, I'd have them in my quiver, and then, gosh, they like rusted before I ever got to use them. And so a razor sharp broadhead is so important because the edge is so important. And, rust starts at the thinnest part and the most, exposed part, which is the edge. So like all the edges were rusted, not just those, there were a lot of them like that would rust because that A2 steel had become popular with a lot of these builders for its durability, because everybody was shooting basement walls with their broadheads and thinking that's what a broadhead had to do, was kill basement walls. So, so then day 6 got started, and I struggled with whether to do broadheads or not, because my gosh, there's so many broadheads out there. But I knew what I wanted. I wanted a convex shape, and I couldn't understand how all these great heads over the years were made that way. And then now you couldn't hardly find one that way. They were all straight, just straight. Well, I figured it out. I started trying to, when I made the decision to start making broadheads, I started trying to get blades made. None of the blade manufacturers, grinders, as soon as you sent them a drawing, they'd say no, because of that round blade, because it's so much harder to produce that and sharpen it. It has to be done with special equipment and machinery. It takes twice as long, and it's a lot more expensive. It's like, well, crap. Now I know why no one's building that, because a radius shape is so much stronger than a straight shape. Like if radius geometry wasn't stronger, 55-gallon drums wouldn't be round, they'd be square. Bridges wouldn't be arced, they'd just be flat. There's a reason that things are radiuses, for strength. But that's what I wanted, but I couldn't get anybody to do it in the traditional blade manufacturers that most people were using. So I reached out I went outside that industry and started going into the food service industry, and found a company that made really specialty knives for the food industry. And I sent them my CAD drawings for my blades, and they're like, oh yeah, no problem. So then it came down to material, like what material are you going to use that is strong so it'll hold up for these guys on YouTube shooting their basement walls in their mom's house, versus not rusting. And that's when I, landed on the crucible stuff. And that's what all your high-end knives are made out of, is crucible steel. So, anyway, it just was a long, hard process. And then the last component of it was the bleeder design. Like, I wanted that bleeder to be forward of the ferrule. I wanted it to be so I could elongate it and have it low profile and have the blade angle commensurate with the main blade angle. So it's very little resistance, little drag, low friction. And so that's what we did. And, man, like I've been building these heads now for 5 years. And I'm honestly, like, everybody else is always coming out with a new model. There's nothing I would change. And so when the single bevel thing came back to light, I almost kind of laughed it off, because I had shot single bevels pretty much throughout all of the 90s and then early 2000s. That's what I shot, and knew at that point, after shooting probably 400 or 500 plus animals with a single bevel, like, why it was inferior. Not that it was bad, but why it was inferior to what I wanted and what we were building. So when the single bevels came out, I kind of just was like, it's a nothing. These things have been around forever. They've already been disproven to be superior. It's not gonna catch hold and stay. But I underestimated YouTube. So yeah. And so we had so many people pushing us to make them. And my guy that does our grinding on our blades, he was begging me to do it because he's a hunter, and he's like, hey man, let's go single bevel, because it takes him half as long to make them. So we could have made a Broadhead single bevel for half the price on the labor side, but it's inferior. So like now that every person says, when they're trying to say a cut on contact 2-blade, instead they just call it a single bevel. It's really misleading, because that sends people on the journey looking for that. And it's not at all, in my opinion, based on my experience, it's not what you want, because it's such an inferior edge to a double bevel head. And so if a single bevel edge was superior, I guess my comment would be, anybody listening to this, go find one single bevel knife in your house. And there's not a single person that can go put your hands on one. They don't exist for a reason. It's an inferior edge. And I know I'm just kind of going on the tangent here of like the progression of this, but the idea is that it creates rotation. Well, if it does create rotation, it's not enough rotation to override or supersede what the arrow rotation already is. So it's really a nothing burger. But my point all along is that what is the benefit of rotation if it did rotate? It doesn't, but if it did enough to make a difference, what's the advantage? Well, there is actually no advantage. There's a disadvantage. And so back in the 80s and 90s, there were replaceable blade broadheads that the blades were offset like a boat propeller, and to create a screw effect rotation. And their life was very short-lived, because people realized that once that head got into an animal and started creating rotation, it slowed the forward momentum of the arrow down. So
dramatically, a lot.
Dramatically. It's the difference between a screw and a nail. And so they went away really quickly, because like it is like a penetration killer. And if you think about the energy it takes to, and the external motor that you have to screw a screw into a piece of wood versus driving it with a hammer and a nail, big difference. The difference with an arrow that is trying to generate rotation through that media is that it has to have an external motor to do that. Well, it doesn't have that. So, basic laws of physics, it has to tax that energy from something else. Well, the only thing it can tax or rob energy from is the forward momentum of that arrow. It's the movement of the arrow. So it has to take that energy to start to create rotation and turn, thus reducing the energy, the forward momentum of the arrow. It's common sense stuff. And these people continue to get on these platforms and talk about the benefits of the single bevel head. And it is comical at this point that most of these people know exactly what I'm saying, but they're still preaching this. And so the good thing is, this is the always try to find the silver lining. The silver lining is, at the end of the day, the single bevels don't create enough rotation to diminish penetration. So it's not a problem. They say that the rotation in bone helps split it. No, it's the 2-blade split that causes that
crack,
that crack and that breaking. And so the good thing is that the rotation's not there, so it doesn't really create that negative effect and that momentum loss. But what you end up with is you end up with a straight, either 2-blade that leaves a perfect slit that is not a good wound channel and does not release the pressure to free up that sidewall friction for the arrow. But number two, which is the main thing to me, is it's an inferior edge. It dulls, chips, and fails very easily because it's an unsupported edge. And the key to a broadhead working in all aspects: flight, penetration, hemorrhage, bone breaching. I am convinced that it is the sharpness. The sharper, the better the edge, the better all of those things perform.
And that comes down to common sense. Like now, and
all of this
I will
is common
say,
sense.
I will say, like, I bought into the single bevel hype, and that was where my failure came in, was the perfect slit. Shot a bear in Idaho with it. Picture perfect shot. I mean, I would not change anything about the shot if I could go back and change it. And I didn't find a single drop of blood. Well, it's a perfect slit. There's all the fat layers, all the hair layers.
Yeah.
And it didn't bleed. And that was when I told myself, like, man, I got to find something. I got to find something that's just going to disrupt that perfect slit. And that was when I went on my journey of looking.
Yeah.
But to your point, like, just think about the cuts you've had in your life. Like if you fall on the rocks and it's jagged and like it doesn't bleed a lot. Like it's more of just like a busted up, like there's some blood. But if you catch yourself with a razor blade, you bleed for hours. Like you can't stop it. Like it might be, it might be it might be, I mean, surface level deep. Like it's not deep at all, but because it's just such a clean slit, it bleeds and bleeds and bleeds and bleeds. And that's why, like, man, I'm a firm believer. Like if people ask me sometimes, like, well, what are you doing? Like the hours leading up, but like before you leave for a hunt, I'm like, I'm sharpening broadheads. Like if I've got a road trip and my buddies are driving and we're on the way to Idaho, like I'm sharpening broadheads in the back of the truck. Like that's the final thing I want to be doing. Like, don't tell me like I've been practicing with my broadheads and they fly great, and then you don't sharpen them after having shot them through foam a bunch. Like you that. Man, the sharpness of your broadhead, and that's again, that's why I was like, man, I just need to make a t-shirt that promotes sharpening your broadheads.
Yeah.
Because it's the single most important part of your hunt. Like if you don't have a sharp broadhead, just don't go hunting. Like I'm sorry.
The thing I alluded to with the rust on all the different heads that use just straight tool steel is rust is enemy number one of a sharp edge. And so that ruled those types of materials out for me immediately. I want it to be razor sharp. The key to having a high quality steel and a double bevel edge, a properly supported edge, is that you want it to be as sharp on entry as it is on exit. You want it sharp the entire way through. And that's why the quality of the material is so important. But it's also why the blade angle is so important, because when you have to chop versus slice, that blade is going to dull and nick so much easier. But if it has the proper blade angles where it's slicing and running along its side, that's where it really shines. Listen, if you could build a 3-inch long by 1-inch wide broadhead that was 100 grains, it would be perfect. So like the 3-to-1 thing that Ashby talks about, that was around way before him. That was Howard Hill's theory and all those guys. I mean, it's slicing. And so if you think about it, if you took a knife and you laid the blade on your finger, think about how much pressure it would take to push it straight down to cut you. But if you laid that same knife on your finger and just used the weight of the knife and just grabbed it by the handle and drug it backwards, that slicing effect will slice right to the bone. And that's why you slice meat and slice things with a knife. You don't chop with it. So when you look at these heads to where either the blade angle, like on a mechanical that sticks straight out, or the blade angle on bleeders that sticks straight out as an afterthought, those blades are having to chop. So they're creating more resistance and drag, but they're also dulling and failing way faster. So what you're trying to do with your blade angle is protect your edge. Just like you don't cut everything with your knife straight down. You draw your knife and it protects your edge. It's common sense stuff. The hunting industry, especially the archery industry, has gotten so good at marketing these myths and falsehoods that people are just buying it. And so for me, like for us, we just want to keep it simple, like make sure the blade angles are right, make sure the material is the best it can be, not going to rust. It's going to be edge retention through the roof, because you can get different types of steel and harden it to different hardnesses to where you can take the same steel and harden it to, say, 65 Rockwell hardness. And it is a booger bear to sharpen. But when you get it sharpened, it's going to be sharp to the end of time. Okay. But when you take something up that high and get it so hard, it becomes brittle. So when you hit bone, it'll break, right? So what you're trying to do is find that happy medium. So you'll take that same material now and you'll heat treat it and harden it to 60 Rockwell hardness. And now just that difference between 60 and 65, the toughness is like 3-4x what it was at 65. Like it almost can't break it. The problem is that it's a little bit softer, and so it's not going to hold the edge quite as good as it was when it was super hard. But the upside to that is that you'll be able to resharpen it easier. So there's all these little finite balances that you've got to, pay attention to. Most broadheads are like basically it's called a 420 stainless is what pretty much everybody makes if it's a stainless, like your production heads. And they just, they don't really even pay attention to the hardness on it. It's just basically they do a simple treat, let it rip. And that's why those heads, like most production heads, are dull as soon as you shoot one time. To where when you get into that high quality stuff, if you don't hit anything hard, like with ours and some of these other ones, and you retrieve the arrow, it's still just as sharp because of that quality steel and the proper hardness and the edge retention. So those are all things that are super important. I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit here, but like when you go to mechanicals, the mechanicals, for the most part, for me, have I think there's a place for them, honestly. But and we'll get into that. But where I feel like their shortfall or their shortcomings is number one, most of them are built very cheaply. And they're very long. So when you take something that long out of cheap materials and then you cut 80% of the body out to get all these blades in, structurally, it's just not very strong. So if you encounter any type of dense bone or anything, they usually fail, and the blades are so flimsy and cheap, they just break off. And that's most of your production styles. And then when you start getting into a little bit more quality mechanicals, they still don't address blade angle. Like every single one of them, if you look at them, the blades stick straight out when they open and they get these super wide cuts. Well, that just defeats the entire premise of what a broadhead is supposed to do and what a blade is supposed to do. They've got them chopping instead of slicing. And you're also creating such a lever with those wide blades that stick straight out that are having so much resistance against them because of their angle, that now you're changing the path of your arrow. And so you're taking the knock, the energy from all that mass, that arrow that should be focused right behind the head. And then those fins are steering that back of that arrow, and it's taking the mass of the arrow and removing it from behind the head, killing momentum. And so people talk about that wide cut on a mechanical is what causes it to not penetrate well. And that is part of it because it's chopping instead of slicing or creating resistance. But the main thing is that when you see these big mechanicals hit animals, it immediately changes the trajectory of the arrow and spins the knock away from that actual path, and you lose all your energy. And so you're basically just taking a knockout punch from an arrow and just making it a glancing blow. That's one of the main drawbacks to it. So, but who should shoot mechanicals? Well, I hate to say this, but probably more than not, there should probably be a majority of people should probably shoot them. And I know that sounds very counterintuitive to my way of thinking, but when I go back to the guys I was talking about that I hunted with, they don't shoot their bow. They don't know how to tune a bow. They don't know how to bear shaft tune. They're not going to spend the time or don't have the time to shoot. And so they're never going to be able to shoot fixed blade heads accurately. There's a lot of people that can't shoot fixed blade heads accurately. And that's where the mechanical comes in for somebody, is that if they're not going to commit the time to it or don't have the time or the knowledge, the mechanical is going to be accurate for them and it's going to hit where they want. I'm 52 years old. Like you said, I'm old. And I've killed a lot of animals with a bow and arrow, and I've never once shot a mechanical. Never owned one, never bought one, never shot it. But I'm not saying that there's not people that should. The problem is that 99% of them out there are either not built well, not designed well, and they create all kinds of failures. So that's the problem with it. But that trade-off versus being accurate, I think being accurate is more important.
On the topic of mechanicals, I will say in the early days of mechanicals, they were garbage. Like you had failures all the time. Now, the technology in mechanicals has gotten a lot better. Like the technology in mechanicals have gotten to a place where a lot of them I would trust. Like if in a pickle, I would shoot them. And I do shoot mechanicals sometimes, like just to try them, just to run with them. Not very often anymore. But there are times like I shoot one and I'm just like, I want to try it. I'll give her a go. And like there are mechanicals that I think can work well. However, I'm of the opinion, and this is just where I stand. If a broadhead is the most effective on an elk, why would it not be the most effective on a whitetail? And I hate that when guys say like, oh, when I'm going on an elk hunt, like then I shoot day sixes. But for whitetails, I love, a mega meat. And I'm like, okay, a mega meat's a good mechanical. Like I'm not taking anything from that. I like mega meats. However, if the day 6 is the most effective on an elk, why is it not the most effective on the whitetail? And they're like, well, I just want a bigger hole in the whitetail. I'm like, but why? Like, if on an elk you're worried about, on an elk you're worried about penetration and blowing through the elk, why are you not worried about the same penetration on the whitetail? And most guys, they're like, well, I don't, I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong. Like, I'm just trying to get you to consider what you're saying. I'm not saying you need to go change this. I just want you to think about why you're saying what you're saying. And so I take that same mindset and I apply it to compounds versus recurves. And I'm like, okay, why is it that you don't shoot a mechanical on your recurve? And they're like, well, it doesn't generate enough kinetic energy. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that a 2-blade fixed blade broadhead is superior when it comes to shooting a recurve. Now, if the compound is just sending that arrow more effectively, faster, more kinetic energy, why is the 2-blade fixed blade still not more superior in that case? And they're like, well, I don't. I'm like, it's just basic like common knowledge here. Like, the Indians understood that. Like the Indians understood this is what is most effective on my bow. Well, just because our compounds are generating more energy and shooting the arrow more effectively now, the 2-blade fixed blade broadhead is still the most effective to put on the more effective arrow.
Well, it is as long as the person can shoot it accurately, though. That's the
correct.
Problem.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the one caveat. So, and a lot of people can't. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about mechanicals because I don't have enough
a dog in the fight.
Well, I don't have enough firsthand knowledge about the different ones to speak intelligently about it. I can only tell you like the results of all the deer we've tracked over the years,
right?
Deer, whatever, and elk, But here's what I would say from a manufacturing standpoint. I know the constraints with regards to what it takes to design and build a broadhead. And the hardest thing there is in the broadhead space to do is design a very good, strong, structural 100-grain head. So, because you have a weight restriction, right? You have weight restraints. So that's why you see a lot of the 100-grain heads and stuff made with aluminum or vented blades, which we can get into that.
Yeah.
But my recommendation is to anybody that's going to shoot a mechanical, regardless of the brand or whatever, is shoot a 125, because the simple cheat code there is that from a manufacturer's standpoint, when you go to 125, that extra 25 grains removes the restraints from the manufacturer to use whatever material they really want and whatever geometry they want to make it strong, durable, that structural integrity. So, and have structural integrity. So with a 125, most of them are made either with a steel ferrule, which is exponentially stronger than aluminum, as everybody knows, or titanium, which is, usually about 3 times stronger. So, that would be my recommendation. Like if I had my dream, like if I lived in the fairy tale world and I had my dream job, my dream job would be like the bow hunting czar of the world, where I could dictate how things are done. And the first thing would be, if you're not handicapped, you don't shoot a crossbow. And those are not bows.
Speaking of that,
if you want, yeah.
Speaking of that, real quick, I do have to note, Arizona currently right now is voting on a bill to very strongly enforce the handicap crossbow rules. So I would highly encourage you to go let your voice be heard on that, like that.
Well,
because what you just said is
a lot of states are trying to roll back this crossbow thing. Yeah. So
absolutely. So
the first thing I would do
is go get the win.
Yeah, I would get rid of crossbows unless it's a special needs situation. But number 2 would be, I would not outlaw mechanicals, but I would outlaw 100-grain mechanicals. So that no manufacturer could make them under 125. And it would just eliminate a lot of failure and a lot of constraints that they have to build something that's actually structurally sound. So that's kind of like my cheat code on mechanicals. Kind of the little micro dissection of it is look at the blade angle when it's open. They all kind of suck, but get the one that's got the least, perpendicular to the arrow blade angle. And then look at the thickness of the actual blades. That's important, but also look at how much material is on that blade around the pivot point. And because when you have these tiny little flimsy blades and they're pivoting on that pin, some of these things have like a less than a 1/16 of an inch of material around that. So it's just going to break right there every time. So those are kind of my cheat codes on mechanicals. So we can dive back into fixed blades where I actually know a little more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
now I will say, like, and to your point, there are a lot of guys out there don't have the time, the knowledge, the effort, or the energy to put into tuning a bow to shoot just with fixed blades. Just like you said, I understand that. But I also don't want you to pick a mechanical pack of broadheads up. Flies like a field tip. All right. Screw them on and go hunt. Still shoot them and make sure that they're shooting where you want them to. They're deploying how you want them to. Still shoot them and try your broadheads. Don't just say, oh, flies like a field point. Screw them on and go hunt. Because I've seen people so many times, like, it's supposed to fly like a field tip, but they're hitting, down and left. And I'm like, well, you still have to, if your bow is that far out of tune, like, we have some issues. Like, anyway, so don't just buy into that lie either. So,
well, bow tuning is a whole nother podcast, but but like you talked about bears. I've shot a bunch of bears over the years, and like, to me, some of the mechanicals would be tailor-made for bears if bears didn't have such long hair. And people don't consider the hair on different animals as a factor, and it's a huge factor. So because with a mechanical, what you get when it encounters the long hair, I forget the scientific name of it, but you've got your long hairs or guard hairs or whatever that are on the outside. But then when you get closer towards the hide, there's that thick, dense mat, that like fluffy mat hair. And what happens is that with mechanicals, as they're encountering that long hair, it's opening up those blades and it's getting fouled up in all that thick hair. And it's taking that arrow, like I talked about, and turning that knock away from the path of travel. And so with these animals with this really thick hair on them, it deviates that point and that angle so quickly that by the time it hits the hide, you've already lost sometimes 50, 60% of your momentum because the arrow is at an angle now because those blades have spun it. Because it's just a fulcrum, a lever, if you will. So a lever. So anyway, that's super important. If a bear had like the hair and hide, its hide is like this, but if it had the hair of like a Labrador, like super short hair, a mechanical would almost be perfect for those because their hide's so thin and big hole, so on and so forth. It's better to shoot bears further back, in my opinion. I think a bear is a middle animal. Back of lungs, liver, all that. I think it is quickly puts them down. And so, but the hair is such a factor. And then to further that a little bit, like the thing that taught me more about blades, blade angle, and blade steel and material is hogs.
Yeah.
So, their hair, anyone that's never encountered hogs, their hair is like wire, like absolute wire. I've never seen anything like it. And then the hog, I don't know what it is, but their hide is constantly covered in sand and grit and dirt and crap all over them constantly.
And almost calloused because they'll just rub up against trees all day. And so they're.
So the hide, the hair, the dirt, the grit that's on a hog's hide, it taught me so much because it dulls the blades and dulls the edge so fast, unlike anything I've ever shot. It's just a totally different animal. And it's so funny because like shooting warthogs in Africa, their hair is exactly the same. Their hide is exactly the same. Like a pig is a pig, no matter where on the planet it is. They're just wire haired, thick hide, calloused hide, covered in sand, covered in dirt. And all of that, it's almost like taking your knife and just jamming it down into the sand. You know, it's just, it dulls a blade so fast. And so the hogs taught me, man, you really need like a really good edge, like a really good honed edge. And so that's what got me off of single bevels was the hog hides, because that dang edge is where it goes from the one side to the flat. That edge is so weak and brittle that once it went through hogs, man, it was just toast. You had to completely regrind them and resharpen them to get it where it needed to be. The other thing is that on double bevels, everybody saw these. I know you saw them. Is the drag sharpeners. Where you could they had the little crotch stick, I think it was called. And you could just drag the little V and bring an edge back up. Man, I love those things. I mean, I thought they were the bee's knees for the longest time. But hogs taught me that what I was doing is just pulling up a burr, right? And so that burr to the touch is very, very sharp. But it's a very weak, unsupported edge. It's not like a honed knife edge. And so it dulls so fast. So you have your broadhead, what you think is razor sharp. It goes through the one side of the hog, and then it doesn't even go all the way through. And then you pull the arrow out, and it's just, duller than dull, because it's just rolled that burr off that you pulled up with that sharpener. So these are all these little tiny things that I learned over the years watching these arrows go through these animals, thinking, this needs to be perfected, that needs to be perfected. And these are the things that are the most important. And so that's kind of how I got to really everything that we have now is just from all that feedback. So, and then we discussed, or we alluded to vented blades. And if you want me to dive into that a little bit, I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're talking about, like with especially pigs and bears, like all the fat, like they gunk up those vents, and they just, man. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So what I saw with the vented blades is that, especially whenever like I broke a rib or went through the shoulder or cartilage or something like that, was that the little chips and shards and stuff would bunch up with like the meat, the hair, and the hide, and they would stick in those vented blades, and it would reduce penetration because it was just creating like almost like this blob that was stuck in the blade, And so it was just definitely a problem. It was very detrimental to good penetration. And then the other part is every vented blade I ever shot sounded like a bottle rocket going down range.
Yeah.
But here's the upside to the vented blades. I will say that the heads that I shot that were vented were easier to tune, and they were more forgiving for guys who didn't have their bows perfectly tuned, to where a solid surface blade was less forgiving. So, and this is a funny little stat. Okay. So the very first heads that I made to test, the first Evos of our heads, were 2 blades, because I wanted to proof out the main blade and flight and all that. I wanted to proof out like penetration and all that first with a 2 blade. And then once we got the design finalized and got the bleeder blades made and put bleeder blades in, a funny thing happened. This was not by design. It was just kind of just happenstance. When we introduced the bleeder blade, that low profile bleeder blade in front of that ferrule, the accuracy, the groups that we were getting literally shrunk in half. So it became extremely accurate with the bleeder, which is counterintuitive because you're adding more surface area, right? But what that bleeder does, where it's placed, is I feel like it's creating a venturi or cavitation. Basically, it's breaking up, it's disturbing that air that was pushing on that flat surface. It's disturbing and breaking up that air to where it doesn't have like constant pressure pushed on that big side flat of a solid 2 blade. So that's the only thing I can think of from an aerodynamic standpoint, is that it just pulled air and pressure off of that big surface and broke it up. And it when I say literally, it shrunk the groups in half. And this is a great distance, of course, but and just for the record, I don't do the long range shooting. I'm not that good. But Dakota that works here is that good. And then we've been fortunate enough to use a shooting machine a couple of times. And so, but just as an example, at 100 yards, if we had, 14-inch group at 100 with a straight 2 blade, when we added the bleeder, it went to a 7-inch group. Now that was out of a machine, but that big of a difference. So it almost became the equivalent in accuracy of a vented blade. but didn't make any noise, which is what I was looking for. So, firm believer in quiet arrow, quiet flight, quiet bow. I like everything needs to be quiet, especially the arrow approaching the animal. I think that's important.
I can't say, well, I might get hate for this. I don't know. I can't say this enough. Like, this has to be done very, 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 very safely. But if you don't know what he's talking about, like, I would encourage you to listen to an arrow downrange. And what I mean by that, like, I've had buddies shoot by a building. So I'm standing behind the building. Like, I don't, again, the setup of this has to be done very safely, but I'm on the backside of a building. So there's no danger in it, but I get to hear the arrow come by where I'm standing. And I'm not talking feet from me, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And dude, there are heads and there are veins that if you are down there, you hear it from a mile away. And then as it comes by, you hear, like you said, a bottle rocket.
That's what it sounds
like.
And
then when you hit the perfect combo of a broadhead and a vein, it just sounds so much sweeter. So again, I'm not encouraging everybody to go out and do this because everybody doesn't have a good setup to do this.
Yeah.
Because the way that I got to do this, again, they were shooting past a building. There was no harm whatsoever. And I couldn't have gotten hit. And we also had it set up to where the other guy up there with them had a radio. I had a radio. So they were saying like about to shoot. That way I know not to step out. Yeah. I would say before I step out, like, again, has to be done very safely. But it really paints a good picture for you as far as like, why are these deer jumping? Like, my bow's not loud when it goes off. You know, what's going on? Well, they literally hear a stinking missile coming at them. They literally hear, like you said, coming at them. Like, man, yeah. It brought a lot of like light bulb moment to me. Like, oh my gosh, like this is horrendous. Like, and you really want to hear it. Let them shoot a crossbow with a mechanical. That's when you really hear it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. This is 100% true. Now, whether all the players involved would ever admit it, I highly doubt it. But there were two very popular Western guys that came down to Alabama in 2016 and hunted with me. And they had not whitetail hunted there before. And it was very humbling for them because their bows sounded like coffee cans full of pennies when they went off, and arrows were incredibly loud. And I will say that they both received the information, made changes, and the next time they came back, they started seeing the importance of quiet. But anyway, they brought with them some of the very first 100-grain heads from a very popular, very expensive broadhead company as prototypes. And where we shot in our backyard, you could sit on the porch right by, kind of like close by where the target was. And it was behind like the fireplace and this big offset. So you couldn't see the shooter. So we would sit on the porch and then people were shooting and you could hear the arrow go by. And I was sitting there listening to these heads, and I said, that won't work. And one of the guys says, what do you mean? I said, listen to that broadhead versus the field point. I mean, it is like a bottle rocket. And he's like, dang, I've never noticed that before. He said, I don't think it makes a difference. So, and then the other guy came, he was sitting when the other guy was shooting, and he heard it. He said the same thing. I don't think it makes a difference. Well, after the first 2 days, when they were both like 0 for 8, because the deer weren't even there when the arrow got there, they started realizing how important the sound and noise was. So they both went back, and then the one had a really good relationship with that company. He went back and said, I just learned something in Alabama. You got to make a solid version of this. I'm not going to shoot these. And the guy argued tooth and nail. Doesn't matter. But the guy said, I'm not, either you make a solid or I'm out. And so that company the next year released their solid version, and that's what they sell 99% of now. But if I would have just kept my mouth shut, they'd probably still be making and selling bottle rockets. But yeah, that's a true story. That's how like that evolution came about. And it kind of circles back, kind of like brings everything back to the beginning of our conversation. It's real world experiences in the field that teach these lessons that you need if you're going to venture into developing this stuff. And those guys sat there and got a firsthand experience into what the noise of that broadhead sounded like. And then they got to go into the field and see how it translated into these ninja whitetails that we hunted in Alabama. Because they are crackheads. I mean, they have 4-month seasons. I mean, they were born in a war zone. They're jumpy.
Right.
And so they got real world experience. And that's so important. You can't put a price on, and you can't put enough value on having real world experience and enough of a sample size to understand what the stuff is actually supposed to do. And it's really funny because a lot of these companies that manufacture arrows and broadheads and bows, bow sights, rests, releases, all this stuff, you would be shocked at how low the percentage of people that design it actually hunt.
Yep.
I mean, shocked that.
I think I said that.
Oh, did you?
I think I said that the first time we did our podcast. I was shooting a broadhead for years. I love the head. And then I find out like through, I was having a conversation with him and he said, we don't hunt. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't hunt? And I said, how are you designing my broadhead if you don't hunt? Like, what? And I was like, man,
it's crazy.
I didn't tell him at the time, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going to find, I'm done with your broadhead. Like, I'm going to find somebody who's designing stuff who knows what they're doing. Like, there's a difference in being an engineer and being an engineer that also understands anatomy and hunting, and like massive difference. And so like, you're 100% right, dude. You talk to some of these dudes and you're like, wait a minute, you're designing this and you've never hunted? Like, I don't see how that is happening.
Well, for me, like when you see like every year, these companies are releasing a new product, a new product, a new product, a new product, and they're doing it under the guise of improvement or evolution or whatever you want to call it. In my mind, it tells me they're still learning. Right. They're still trying to figure it out. And for me, like if we can make a 1% improvement on anything that we're doing, we're going to do it. And
we're not going to call it a new head because of it. We're just going to fix the current one.
Yeah, of course. But I guess, I do have to jump off here in just a minute, but what I was going to tell you is that like, I do want to wrap this up with a bow and say that, again, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying everything I've said is gospel. I'm not saying that at all. And I want to make that very clear. All I'm saying is that based on my experience putting arrows through animals and understanding manufacturing, that this is what I think is the best answer for achieving the best goals. I mean, achieving the best goal, which is getting 2 holes in an animal. That's all I'm saying. And I'm building basically what I want, that I have seen work and been proofed out over 40 years as a hunter. And but I 100% I could be wrong, but this is what I feel is the best combination of everything we can do given the restraints we have. So I just want to make that very clear. I don't want to come off as my way or my way. Again, I've never shot a mechanical, but I'm sitting here saying there's people that probably should. And they're not going to be customers of ours for broadheads. That's okay. It's not just about money for us. So,
and I will say, I'll echo that. Like, I don't want to be the type you listen to and you think that I'm telling you it has to be this way. It doesn't. I just want you to consider some things. I just want you to think about some things. And if you haven't thought about why you shoot the broadheads you shoot, man, you really should. Like, and if you haven't thought about outside of just, well, Remy Warren said these are great heads. Like, man, again, your broadhead should be the single most thing that you consider. And I'll say this, if you consider your broadhead to be one and done, if you consider your broadhead to be just shoot a new one next time, because you need to get a new broadhead.
Disposable.
I understand. If you consider your broadhead to be disposable, I understand that, like, it's easy to look at it and say, yeah, but these are $25. Day sixes are 100 and $100. I understand that. But I also don't have to throw away the day six every time I shoot an animal with it. I actually shot 2 bears and my wife shot a bear with the exact same head this year in the spring. Not because I was out of heads, but because I just wanted to see how long would this stay sharp. And every time I shot it through a bear, picked it up, still hair popping sharp. So we shot the same head through 3 different bears in one spring, and it's still hair popping sharp. I mean, I can still just pop the hairs off my arms. I don't have to think about my broadheads as being disposable. And if I lose an arrow with a broadhead on it, I go get the stinking metal detector because I don't want to lose that stinking broadhead. It's not just I'll go get another one. So that's what I'll say as well. But guys, again, we don't want to tell you you're wrong. I've seen people, I literally know a story of a guy killing a deer with a fill point. If you shoot them correctly, they will die. I understand that. However, I want to have the most room for error. I want to have the most room for just freak encounters and knowing that this broadhead and this arrow setup gives me the best chance of killing the animal. And for me, that's a day 6 broadhead all day long. I have spent a lot of time in tree stands. I spent a lot of time hanging tree stands. I spent a lot of money buying tree stands. And I know the new rave is the super lightweight, really expensive tree stands. But I just can't get behind that. If you're really wanting to deck out a farm and you need a whole bunch of tree stands, that's just not feasible for a lot of guys. And here's what I found. I have found that if it says Muddy, it's a name you can trust. From the tree stands, whether it be a hang-on, a lock-on, a climber, or a ladder stand, if it says Muddy, it's going to be a really good tree stand without breaking the bank. And I can get 4 or 5 hang-ons for the price of one of those super lightweights. Now, I know the benefit of those super lightweight portable tree stands. You can move it with you and hang it as you go. But if I just buy 4 or 5 of those really good stands for Muddy, I can have them set up where I want and just go to those stands and they're already hung up. Guys, from the trail cameras to the blinds to the tree stands, Muddy is simply a name you can trust. So whether you go into an Academy or a Dick's, Bass Pro, Cabela's, check out Muddy for your tree stands, your trail cameras, and your blinds because they simply make really good products that are affordable for everyone. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties. Sorry that you had to see the nasty storage up here above my shop. But still wanted to get the episode out and get it done today. So thank you so much for listening. You guys keep the dusty side up.